The Bristol Pegasus is a British 9-cylinder, single-row, air-cooled radial aero engine. Designed by Roy Fedden of the Bristol Aeroplane Company, it was used to power both civil and military aircraft of the 1930s and 1940s. Developed from the earlier Mercury and Jupiter engines, later variants could produce 1,000 horsepower, 750 kilowatts, from its capacity of 1,750 cubic inches, 28 L, by use of a geared supercharger. Further developments of the Pegasus created the fuel-injected Bristol Draco and the diesel cycle Bristol Phoenix, both types being produced in limited numbers. In contrast, by the end of production, over 30,000 Pegasus engines had been built. Aircraft applications ranged from single-engine biplanes to the four-engine short Sandringham and Sunderland flying boats. Several altitude and distance records were set by aircraft using the Pegasus. The Bristol Siddeley Company reused the name many years later for the turbofan engine used in the Hawker Siddeley Harrier, and which became known as the Rolls-Royce Pegasus when Rolls-Royce took over that company. Two Bristol Pegasus engines remain airworthy in 2010, powering Fairey Swordfish aircraft operated by the Royal Navy Historic Flight. Other examples are preserved and on public display in aviation museums. Design and development. The Pegasus was designed by Sir Roy Fedden as the follow-on to the Bristol Aeroplane Company's very successful Bristol Jupiter, using lessons learned in development of the Mercury. Although having a capacity 25 L, almost 15% smaller, the Mercury produced about as much power as the Jupiter, through a combination of supercharging to improve the charge and various changes to increase the operating RPM. The power of a piston engine can be calculated by multiplying the charge per cylinder by the number of cycles per second. The Mercury improved both and thereby produced more power for a given size. The primary advantage was a much improved power-to-weight ratio due to better volumetric efficiency. The Pegasus was the same size, displacement and general steel, aluminium construction as the Jupiter, but various improvements allowed the maximum engine speed to be increased from 1950 to 2,600 revolutions per minute. For takeoff power, this improved performance considerably from the Jupiter's 580 horsepower, 430 kilowatts, to the first Pegasus 2 with 635 horsepower, 474 kilowatts, to 690 horsepower, 515 kilowatts, in the first production model Pegasus 3, and eventually to the late model Pegasus 22 with 1,010 horsepower, 750 kilowatts, thanks to the two-speed supercharger introduced on the Pegasus 18 and 100-octane fuel. This gave rise to the claim, 1 pound per horsepower, reflecting the excellent power-to-weight ratio. Some notable users of the Pegasus were the Fairey Swordfish, Vickers Wellington, and Short Sunderland. It was also used on the Anbo 41, Bristol Bombay, Sarrow London, Short Empire, Vickers Wellesley and the Westland Wallace. Like the Jupiter before it, the Pegasus was also licensed by the PZL company in Poland. It was used on the PZL 23 Caras and PZL 37 Los bombers. In Italy, Alfa Romeo built both the Jupiter 126 RC35 and the Pegasus under license, with the engine based on the Pegasus designated as the Alfa Romeo 126 RC34 with the civil version as the 126 RC10. In Czechoslovakia, it was built by Walter Engines and was known as the Pegasus. Approximately 32,000 Pegasus engines were built. The Pegasus set 3 height records in the Bristol Type 138 in 1932, 1936 and 1937. It was used for the first flight over Mount Everest in the Westland Wallace, and in 1938 set the world's long-distance record in Vic as well as Lee's variants. The Pegasus was produced in many variants. Early prototype engines were unsupercharged, but the majority used a geared supercharger, either single-speed or two-speed. Variant differences included compression ratios, propeller reduction gear ratios and accessories. Applications. Note: engines on display. Bristol Pegasus engines can be viewed installed in aircraft at the Royal Air Force Museum, London, and the Imperial War Museum, Duxford. An unrestored Pegasus recovered from the seabed is in the care of the Bristol Aero Collection, which is closed while moving from Kemble Airport to Filton. There is also an engine on display at the Brooklands Museum at Weybridge. Survivors. As of October 2010, 2 Bristol Pegasus engines remain airworthy in England. They power the 2 Fairey Swordfish aircraft operated by the Royal Navy Historic Flight. Specifications. Pegasus 18. Data from Lumsden. General characteristics. Type: 9-cylinder, single-row, supercharged, air-cooled radial engine. Bore: 5.75 in. 146 mm. Stroke: 7.5 in. 190 mm. Displacement: 1753 in cubed. 28.7 L. Length: 61 in. 1549 mm. Diameter: 55.3 in. 1405 mm. Dry weight: 1,111 pounds. 504 kilograms. Components: valve train, 4 pushrod actuated valves per cylinder, 2 intake and 2 sodium-filled exhaust. Supercharger: 2-speed centrifugal-type supercharger. Fuel system: Claudel Hobson carburetor. Fuel type: 100-octane petrol. Oil system: dry sump with 1 combination pressure scavenge pump. Cooling system: air-cooled. Reduction gear: Farman epicyclic gearing. 0.5. 1. Propeller: Rotol 3-blade with variable pitch. Performance: power output: 965 horsepower, 720 kilowatts, at 2,475 revolutions per minute for takeoff at sea level. 835 horsepower, 623 kilowatts, at 2,250 revolutions per minute at 8,500 feet, 2,590 meters. Maximum continuous climb power: 965 horsepower, 720 kilowatts, at 2,600 revolutions per minute at 13,000 feet, 3,960 meters. Maximum power: emergency combat 5 minutes only. Specific power: 0.55 horsepower in cubed, 25 kilowatts per liter. Compression ratio: 6.25. 1. Specific fuel consumption: 0.52 pounds. HPH: 319 grams. kWh. Oil consumption: 0.28 ounces. HPH: 11 grams. kWh. Power to weight ratio: 0.86 horsepower pound. 1.42 kilowatts per kilogram. See also: related development, Bristol Jupiter, Bristol Mercury, Bristol Phoenix, Alfa Romeo 125. Comparable engines: Pratt & Whitney R1690, Wright R1820. Related lists: list of aircraft engines. Notes. Bibliography. Further reading: Dunstan, Bill. Development of piston air engines. Cambridge, England. Patrick Stevens Limited. 2006. ISBN 0-7509-44781-1. Bristol Pegasus at the Bristol Aero Collection. Bristol Pegasus used an altitude record flight. 1932. Improving the breed, a 1936 flight article on the Pegasus and Mercury